All right, so we're going to let Julia's actually run off for cookies, but she's our social enterprise coach here at Pillar. Very new to the team. Yeah, it's too excited. Very new to our team. She meets one-on-one frontline with our social entrepreneurs that come in, and then between us, we work on Flourishing Business Canvas and work together on some of the other ideation things. So she's going to introduce Karen for you and help us facilitate the rest of the afternoon. If I will also say we do have a couple more things on the agenda, but if everyone is just burned out, information overload, we will skip to the end and end early. Okay? If you are like, you want the whole thing, no problem. But if we're just in a collective, this is too much, would you please stop talking? We'll do that. After, doesn't work. All right, take it away.
Awesome. So like she said, my name is Julie Forrester. I'm the social enterprise coach. Been with Pillar for about a month and a half now. Does that sound about right? Seems like longer. And I absolutely love it. So I get to work one-on-one with all of our social enterprises here in the London area, connect with our local ecosystem, who I see a lot of you guys here today, and basically support social enterprises as much as I can. So I'm here today not to talk about myself. Fortunately, I do not have to give any presentations today. So I don't know how I got out of that one, but I'm happy about it. And I'm here today to introduce Karen Minty, who is going to be doing our storytelling session today. So a bit of an intro on Karen. Karen is the founder of 40 Hours. She has an international master's degree in education, adult learning, and global change from the University of British Columbia, as well as a bachelor's degree in adult education from Brock University. She studied at 7 different universities around the world: Canada, Sweden, Australia, and South Africa. And while in university, she stretched the boundaries of creativity in formal education by regularly submitting alternative creative projects, which she was telling us a bit about last night and sound pretty amazing. So including storytelling in lieu of some of your standard traditional essays that the university was expecting. And she proved over and over again that there is always a place for creativity, humor, and storytelling in education. Creativity is her passion, her specialty, and forms the basis for all her projects as a contracted writer, curriculum designer, program development, public speaker, and facilitator. Her specialty is converting your expert knowledge into engaging, hands-on, and fun presentations or workshops. And over the past 4 years, she's hosted her own TV talk show, Community Conversations, so she's now famous. And Karen has fine-tuned her skill at extracting people's stories and sharing them in a way that resonates with the audience. So she is here today to share her secret sauce and her expertise on storytelling. Let's all welcome Karen.
So I'm just going to have a look at my time here, because I could literally talk to you till Friday about storytelling and probably not tell you everything that there is to tell you. Just a really quick note, the lady that was just here talking to us while we were eating, I forgot her name. Lori. She talked about the what if, and it just brought to mind when I was in South Africa, one of the universities has a great big huge flag, and it says, what if your what if worked? And I thought that was pretty profound. So that wasn't part of my presentation prior to 10 minutes ago, but I thought I would just share that. So who in this room, you all are coaching entrepreneurs, who is skeptical of the value of storytelling in business? Is there anybody that's really skeptical? You told me they were going to be skeptics. Okay, so we'll just cut that whole section out. So do you consider yourself a storyteller? Show of hands, who says, yeah, I'm a storyteller? Okay, so we've got about maybe half. So, what's my thingy here? I am a storyteller, I always have been, and I think that you have been too. So the first thing that I think of is how important storytelling right now. You've just been pulled over for a speeding ticket. What is the immediate thought going through your head? First of all, you're undoing your shirt a couple buttons. You're thinking, you know what, officer, oh, I'm so sorry, but you know what, I was just about to leave, and the dog threw up all over the place. If I don't clean up now, the whole house is going to smell. And then my kids, I forgot they had to be to school early for a trip, and then they forgot their lunch, and we had to go back and get it, and now I'm late for work, and this is happening. What have you just done? You've weaved a story. Whether or not there's an ounce of truth to it or not, you've just story told. So also think of your favorite commercial. probably one that tells a story. It's probably one from the Super Bowl, because they always win. Now, think of that. Is your favorite commercial the one about the drug? I think it's Cialis or something. I just still don't know what that drug is for. And half of the commercial is, side effects may include rash, loss of sight, liver disease, kidney disease, heart attack, stroke. And they say it, the entire commercial is about the side effects. And you're like, what? What was that commercial even for? So those are the ones that not probably ever going to be up on that favorite list, because they didn't really tell you a story, right? So I learned very early on the power of storytelling. And I'll bet that most of you, if you have siblings in the room, can relate to this story. So you've gotten into a fight with your brother or your sister. Your parents throw you down at the kitchen table across from each other. Now they're going to be judge and jury, and they're going to decide who did it. What happened? Tell your story. What happened? You tell your story, and then your parent decides who's in trouble, who's going to the room, and who's off. So does the right kid always get punished? No. And it kills me when parents still do that, because my thoughts are, all you're doing is teaching your child to lie better than their sibling. You're teaching them to tell a story. I have 3 older brothers and sisters. I was very aware as a child that I had to out-talk someone that is 3, 4, or 8 years older than me to get me out of trouble, because I wasn't really the best child. So I learned really early on, if I can evoke some emotion in my mom and get her feeling for my side, develop a little bit of credibility that I may not have even been in the room at the time, and then I give her the most logical explanation of how that got broken, I'd win against my brother 8 years older, and boy, that made him mad. So I learned very early the power of good storytelling. Now, more recently, I have learned about storytelling about other people's stories. And stories aren't always, I tend to talk about them as if you're public speaking, as if you're at the front of the room, or you're giving a pitch to some investors or supporters or customers or whatnot. But storytelling takes on a lot of different ways. You can tell a story with a picture, with the pictures that you choose to be in your slide. The picture, your logo. You can tell a story through music. What's her name? Taylor Swift. What's her life story about? Anybody listen to Taylor Swift? Breakups. That's all Taylor Swift does, is serial breakups. Okay, so a little tidbit, just kind of a random thought. You can tell what kind of a learner someone is and how to appeal to them by how fast they speak. I'm a very fast speaker. I'm a visual learner. Visual learners speak very fast. People who are audio learners speak at a normal pace. So you might want to appeal to them with a jingle or with a song. Slow speakers are kinesthetic learners. They have to do it. They've got to think it through. So they're very slow speakers. Now I date a slow speaker and he goes, "Oh my God, just say it!" But he tells his story at his own speed. And sooner or later, it comes out. As I'm this way, and because I've got my 7 stories out in 3.5 minutes. But that's just so that you realize that storytelling isn't always just about the pitch at the front of the room. Now, I have a TV show. I've had it for 4 seasons. The first year I had my TV show, it was all about me. I'm going to be famous. It's local TV in Sarnia. I probably have about 37 viewers, and they're all about 80-year-old women. But it was all about me, and this was my role, and I got to do it. And I made up these, I would pre-interview the people, and I would make up questions for each segment, and I would get them on. And if they started talking off to the side, the only thing I could think of was, how am I going to get them back to this? And I wasn't even paying attention to what they thought. I was like, how do I get to question 3? And so it tended to look a little bit like I was fishing. So I kind of got some experience under my belt, and then I started paying attention to really what they were saying, and I kind of let them go off on their own, because I thought, you know what, they deserve to tell their own story. So I always say, unless you go completely off on a tangent, I will swing you back, But if you go somewhere interesting, I'm going to follow you, because I think you deserve to tell your story in the way that you want to tell your story, instead of the way that I have it chopped into 3 segments, 8 questions each. And when I started doing that, I started getting a lot of feedback on my show. I loved your show. I couldn't believe when Melissa was on your show. She's my favorite guest. I could totally relate to her. And the show wasn't about me anymore. So the way I looked at it was I was a tour guide. So when you want to go and see something good or hear a story, you get the tour guide. Does the tour guide get really any credit? No. But would you see the sights as well as you do if you didn't have a tour guide? So I became the tour guide. My show stopped being about me. It became about my guests and how they wanted to tell their stories. And I've gotten a lot more success. I now get recognized at the grocery store, although I can't figure out why people are staring at me, and my friend will say, "You're famous." I'm like, she says, "You're the worst famous person ever, because you keep forgetting you have a TV show." And I'm like, I thought that lady was talking to us because she knew you. And right. I think that was it. What storytelling is basically, though, if you think about it, is it's giving information. Instead of me giving you a laundry list of all of the skills that I have and the education that I have and what I do and all that, I'm going to tell you some tidbits. They're going to be personal, non-intimidating, and you're going to listen to me because I'm going to draw you in and interest you. I'm going to involve other people. So it's basically about getting to know you. Now, people in business, who do they want to buy from? It was mentioned several times throughout today if anyone was paying attention. You like to buy from someone that you know. You want to do business with people you know. Why? Okay, I don't think the sugar buzz of the cookie is working. Yeah. Trust. Any other reasons why you want to do business with someone you know? Yep. Support them. They have a reputation. You probably know their core values. You know you can trust them. Now, how did you get to know them? Probably because you heard their stories, either from somebody else or from them. So it's a very powerful way to get people to know you, to build those relationships, to then be able to sell. So what storytelling is not? It is not rambling on with no purpose and giving completely irrelevant information with no point, no direction, and just a rambling. That's not going to get you anywhere, and more than likely some information that you probably don't want people to know is going to slip out. And the other thing it isn't is a chronological statement of facts. Now, a friend of mine she gave a famous 5 Enbridge Enbridge speakers, what's it called? Famous 5 Enbridge speakers. So she was asked to give a speech. Now, she's a good public speaker. So she says, "What do you think of my speech?" And she handed it to me, and it was, "And then I did this, and then I did that, and then I did this, and then I did that, and in 2013 I did this, and then in 2014 I did this, and I did that, and I did this." And I said, "I love you because you're my best friend, and I think your story is good, but you don't have a compelling enough story to tell it in chronological order." And she's like, "What?" And I said, "You need to break it up into points and support it with your stories. No one wants to hear and then, and then, and then, because they don't know where you're going." So the only person who I have ever heard speak ever was Stephen Bradbury. Does anyone remember who Stephen Bradbury was? I think Australia, doing a Bradbury. Okay, he was a 2002 Olympic gold medal for speed skating. Does that bring any bells back? Okay, well, we need to watch the video now. So how do I get to the video from here? I forgot to ask that. I don't know how to use a Mac. Okay, this is a 2-minute clip of Stephen Bradbury, and he is the only speaker that I have ever heard in my life be able to give his story chronologically and at work, because he was an amazing guy. And pray the sound works. Oh, you gotta go back to the start.
Going into the final, I was excited
No, it wasn't.
to be in the final, and I knew that
Okay, sorry.
I wasn't all that nervous going into the final. I was excited to be in the
No,
final.
this is,
and I
no,
knew
wrong
that
video.
I'd had a fair amount of luck to get from the semi-finals to the final.
Sorry, it must have gone to the other one when you're trying it out. This one, last man
Let's
standing.
suppose that you're writing a really important email to a colleague.
Sorry, we were having troubles with the sound, so we kept playing it, so it's now gone to the next video. This is it. Yep.
Oh yeah, this is the right one.
This is
Now
right.
I remember.
Woo!
Sorry, that was my fault.
Last man standing is what I was dubbed by the world's media after that race. Exactly how did that happen? I trained for 12 years, competed for Australia in 4 Winter Olympic Games. The main reason that I was there at Salt Lake City was to put some demons to rest. In Canada, 1994, I was impaled on the back of a rival skate, got my leg cut open, almost lost my life. 18 months before winning that gold medal, I had a crash in training, went head first into the barrier and broke my neck. I'd skated at 3 Winter Olympics, and I hadn't done my best at any of them, and I just wanted to skate my best. In Salt Lake City, I did that in the quarterfinals. I beat a 4-time world champion, made it through to the semis. I was pretty realistic about it and decided I don't think I'm as good as these other guys. My best chance to get through to the final was to get on the ice in the semi and stay out the way. Figured there's no reason I should change my tactics for the final. Bring this on! Heading into the last turn, I see the Chinese guy fall. Set up my final turn out of the corner of my eye. I see the other 3 tumble. And from that moment I knew I didn't have to skate anymore. All I had to do was glide across the finish line. I wasn't sure if I should put my arms up in the air in celebration or go and hide in the corner. Had no idea what the appropriate response was at that moment. I suppose in some people's mind, the question will always remain, did I win Olympic gold by accident? Half a dozen blokes had just fallen over and they wanted me to go up there and take the gold medal for it. I wasn't sure if I deserved to. I had a few minutes to think about it, but during that few minutes I decided, yeah, I'm going out there on the podium and I'm taking that gold medal, but I'm not taking it for the 90 seconds.
And not one person got up to go to the bathroom. No one was on their phone. We were on the edge of our seat, riveted, because he has such an amazing life. And he's not a public speaker. In fact, his manager, after he won that, he said, well, people want you to speak. And he's like, well, what do you mean speak? And he says, well, they want you to give a talk. And he said, well, what do you mean? And he says, a 20-minute talk. And he says, 20 minutes? He says, yeah. And he says, in a row? Because he'd never spoken public before. But he got some training, he had somebody help him with writing the speech, and he was the most phenomenal guy ever. He has sold his story in a way that I've never seen anyone else. He evoked all the right emotions in all the right places, and you're drawn into him. So most of us, however, don't have 12 years of Olympic history to fall back on. So chronological order tends not to work. So back to the unintentional rambling is the other thing. His speech was very, very clean, crisp, but he also had a professional speechwriter. I found on Monday night, I came to Mo Mondays. Does anyone know what Mo Mondays is? Okay, it's a speaking venue and predominantly for amateur speakers. So they get up and they tell their story, and they have 10 minutes and whatnot. So I love watching speakers. So there was a girl there who was bulimic, and then she, found yoga and got better, and then went the other way with her eating disorder, and that was her story. There was a fellow that used to be an alcoholic, and he started having seizures, so now he's not. So all the stories were about the pain and about what happened to stop the pain. And my friend and I left, and we were like, that was supposed to be really inspirational, and on some level it was, but there was just something missing. What was missing? And the missing part was, what was in it for me? So you're on stage for 10 minutes now, you've told me about your pain, and you told me you recovered. What's in it for me? So you didn't tell me where you found your inspiration. You didn't tell me how your life has changed. You didn't tell me that I could learn something from it or anything. They didn't qualify it, kind of thing. They simply got on stage and they explained their life. So there's a difference between telling your story and explaining your life. And the key to that is 3 points, which ironically I'm going to give you. So how to story tell. Now, like I said, this is 45 minutes. I could be here for 4 days. But the 3 key points to a really good story that will sell, and your entrepreneurs are in the business to sell. They're selling something. They're selling their reputation, their product, their services, their social enterprise, the whole social enterprise concept, but they're selling something. So the 3 things that they need in that talk or in their storytelling is ethos, pathos, and logos. Anybody know who said that? Aristotle. So it's not a new concept. It's not something that, Tony Robbins just came up with last week or anything. This is a really old. So ethos, in a nutshell, means establish credibility. So you need to establish credibility with your audience. Pathos, you need to evoke emotion. So you need to really pull on the heartstrings, get them laughing, evoke some emotion. And the logos is provide proof. Although I have added to the provide proof part, and I always say that that is also the logic behind it and the what's in it for me. So let's see what each of those look like dissected a bit. So what did I do at the very beginning of this presentation? Anybody? Did I build some rapport? Yeah?
You also build your background.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing that you went to school and where you went to school and things like that.
Okay, did I share that?
No, you didn't.
Right, I did indirectly. So first of all, I made very good use of my intro. It's always better when someone else brags about you than you brag about yourself. Yep.
You were honest that you just hadn't been fit into it.
Right. Okay, so what did that tell you about me? I'm honest. Anything else? Kind of last minute-ish, a little spontaneous. You know what, I just had a great idea pop into my head. I've got to tell you now. I feel compelled to tell you. Okay. I asked you some questions so that I could get you kind of involved, although the cookies still aren't working. Basically, I build rapport, and that's a good part of storytelling. That is establishing your credibility. So the best way to establish your credibility is also to talk about your expertise and talk about your personal life, because no one knows your personal life like you do. So if I told you a story about my ex-husband, are you going to argue with me? No, because no one knows my ex-husband as well as I do. So you're not going to question what I say about him. You're not going to question that I'm not telling you the truth, because you don't know any better. So I'm now the expert about my ex-husband. Okay? So you're the expert about your life. You're the expert about whatever you're selling. And I'm going to tell you a really quick story about me, and I want you to let me know what it tells you. So when I went to Brock University, I just went back as a mature student in 2013. Then I went on to do my master's. So over the past 4 years, I've written 112 essays. I hate essays. I absolutely hate essays. About third semester, I thought, I am not doing any more essays. This is crap. So I decided to start handing in some creative presentations. One of them was a literature review. We had to talk about a whole bunch of different authors. I set it up like a talk show. I was the host. I dressed up ridiculously as 11 different authors, and I interviewed myself 11 different times as 11 different people. The professor had a look at the first couple minutes of it, sent me an email and said, "Oh my God, Minty, this is hilarious. I got to have a beer before I watch the rest of it." But I got the point across. I have made an infomercial. I have made a movie. I have I wrote a story about a drunken dinner party with some scholars arguing their points. Anything like that. And I often didn't ask permission, because it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. But I proved to them, because the rhetoric in school is that when you tell stories or you use humor or anything like that, you lose contact. you've added bling to make up for your lack of content. And so I proved to them that you could do both. And I got stellar marks because I wasn't trying to hide something, I was trying to enhance it through storytelling. And now what does that tell you about me? So I've told you a story. I haven't actually come out and told you what characteristics I hold, but what has that told you about me? Yep.
You're creative and you have a slight disregard for the rules.
Slight. Okay, that's an underestimate. Okay, we'll go with slight. So I'm a bit of a rebel. I don't like rules. I like outside of the box. I like creativity, and I'm not afraid to challenge authority. So I didn't give you that laundry list of my characteristics, but I let them come across in a story. So you can make whatever inferences that you want about that. So would that have been as effective as me giving you the laundry list? Well, I'm really smart, and I decided to do things differently, and my skills are based in movie making, and that. Is that going to come off as well as a funny story? No. Right, one person nodded no. Yay! Thank you. Thank you for being here and giving me nods. You're the only one. Okay, so an important part of creating emotion is tapping into your vulnerabilities. Now, show of hands, who thinks their vulnerabilities is a weakness? You weren't the only one. Okay, if I give you another minute, am I going to get a couple? Okay, so we're going to do a little example here. And I think I'm going to use you because I know you. Can you tell me what your greatest achievement is? Your children. Okay, why are they your greatest achievement?
Well, I think it's important to impart your values and create good human beings.
Okay, did everybody hear that? She feels it's important to instill your value and create good human beings. So, was there any personal hardship that you had to overcome to be able to instill that into them?
Childbirth.
Childbirth.
A lot of things. I think parenting's the hardest thing to do.
Okay, were there any obstacles along the way?
Yeah, many.
Can you give us one?
Knowing when to step back and let them make their own decisions.
Is that hard for you?
Yeah.
There you go.
Very hard.
So this wasn't the best example, but it worked. When you ask someone what their greatest achievement is, and they'll tell you, and then you ask them why, and generally they'll go straight to their biggest vulnerability, the biggest obstacle. You say, what is your greatest achievement? Mine is going back to school and getting a master's degree. Why? Because I never thought I could do it when I was younger. I thought I didn't have the smarts to do it. I didn't think I would ever be able to do it. And I gave up so much to go back to school and get this education. So when you ask someone what their greatest achievement is, they generally will tell you and they'll attach their greatest pain to it. So when you look at that greatest pain or your greatest vulnerability, that was the catalyst to your biggest achievement. So how can that possibly be a weakness? Okay, so the worst thing that ever happened to you in your life, or your biggest fear that acted as a catalyst to do something great, how can that be a weakness? It's not a weakness. It's actually a strength. It's the source of your achievement. So you have to stop thinking about your vulnerability as your weaknesses, and you can share them when you don't think of them as weaknesses. So in order to get a really good story out, you've got to share some vulnerability, even if it's just a tiny bit. I know a lot of private people. I have a very good talent of sharing stories that people think are really deep and meaning to me and everything, but they're public knowledge. And then they think, oh wow, she told me about her kids, and she told me this, and wow, I think we've really bonded. And I'm like, yeah, it's public knowledge. You just don't know that. But if you can tell it in a way that people believe it and they take your credibility and you've evoked emotion, then they take that and they feel like you've really shared your vulnerabilities. when you're using your vulnerabilities, it's really good to use them and then to show the recovery for them. So show the vulnerability and then that greatest achievement. So we had a guy yesterday, we were learning about the youth opportunities, something that started with you. Unlimited, okay. So they had the girl giving the presentation about it, and then they had the, I think he was the resident manager or superintendent. And he wanted to say a few words. Well, he said, I've been in and out of this program since I was 15. I was homeless when I was 12. I was a drug addict, an alcoholic. I lived on the street. I got kicked out a few times because I couldn't obey their rules. But they kept giving me chances, and I kept going back. And finally, I made something of myself. And then it was time to leave, and I really needed to give back. And so they hired me on to this, and now I'm going to school, and I'm going to do this. And he's going to be a child youth worker. So I dare you to think, who makes a better social worker? Someone in a rich, privileged home that went to prep school and has had everything given to them and knows absolutely nothing, or the past homeless drug addict? Who is going to be more effective? Who is going to be the real expert in understanding those kids' emotions and what they're going through? Right. So what did he share? He shared his vulnerabilities. He shared his story. He shared, I used to be a drug addict. That's not something you really want to go around admitting a whole lot, but he recovered from it because he now uses that experience as towards his greatest achievement. So don't be afraid to say what your weaknesses are. I know when we're out there, we just want to pump them. I'm really good at this, I'm really good at that, and I do this well. You can also tell them what you don't do well and how it's affected you, that it makes you do something else well. Okay? Always put a spin on it that it got you to where you need to go. For example, I have ADHD. I grew up undiagnosed. I got diagnosed when my son was. When my son was diagnosed, I went out and literally in the next 2 months read 17 books about ADHD. I have a little bit of OCD too. The good thing about having ADHD and OCD is you become totally obsessed, but not for long, because then you're like, woo, and you're obsessed with the next thing. So it's entertaining when there's 3 of you like that living under the same roof. So I went out, I read all these books about ADHD, and even the psychiatrist said, no one's ever read 17 books between appointments. Are you kidding me? Because I wanted to learn everything that I needed to know. Now, every expert told me that I needed to be structured, I needed to be routine, I needed to have charts, I needed to give them stars, I needed to reward them for this, and I needed to have jars and do you know how exhausting that is for someone who has ADHD as well? I could make the most fabulous looking chart, but after about noon on the second day, I've lost the stars. I don't know where they are, and I can't remember what you did an hour ago that you deserved one. I can't do that. And then I tried to get my kids so routine that when there was something different after school, they were like, oh, what do you mean? Wait, no, after school we go home and we have a snack for this many minutes and we do our homework. And I thought, these aren't going to be resilient kids. Are you kidding me? I can't keep track of them, and I don't want to, and life just happens. And I gave that up, and I thought, I'm just going to parent from my heart. What works for me is probably going to work better for them. And I did that, and all of a sudden my kids started to flourish. And in fact, so did I as a parent, because I stopped trying to put check marks and charts and everything and actually talked to my kids and went through with what they were dealing. So I use that story in some context that now I'm the expert. I am an ADHD mother mothering ADHD children. So there's not a lot of books out there that are from that perspective. So I earned credibility by my experiences. And the funny thing is, no one ever told me when I was younger that my experiences were credible. My mother used to drill into me that you are credible by your education. You don't have an education, so you're not credible. And she'd say, well, who's going to watch you? Who's going to pay money to see you? You're not credible. So what did I do? I went and got that education. And now, you know what my mother says to me? Well, you don't have any experience. Who's going to pay to see you? You don't have any experience doing that. No one's going to hire you. Okay, so your experiences do make you credible. Now, what are we on here? I would really like to stay in that spot, but we have to move on now. The next one is pathos. So pathos is evoking that emotion. Now, for example, I go back to the Mo Mondays. We went to Mo Mondays, and the stories were the same roller coaster. Okay, so it starts out okay, then this horrible thing happens, and I feel despair and anger and sadness, and then I come up and I find relief and hope, and I move on. So even though everyone's story is different, the emotions are the same. So you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a startup company with a service that has never ever been provided before. So how could anyone know what you're going through? Because every entrepreneur in the room can relate to the frustration, to the overwhelm, to the, oh my God, I hope someone hires me, to the start of success where you have a little hope, you have that spark of hope and all that. So no matter what your story is, if you stick in that roller coaster of emotions, people will relate to it because they're going to start immediately thinking about what causes them to feel those emotions. Now, when you, the other thing is for, sorry, I have a really dry mouth. I need a cookie. Totally need a cookie. So I realized that not everyone knows how to use emotion particularly well. Our Chamber of Commerce in Sarnia has the Outstanding Business Achievement Award. You probably have something similar in London and in the city that you're in. And someone had asked me for help to do one, and I thought, oh, this might be an opportunity. So I put on Facebook, do you need help? Are you overwhelmed writing that? You don't know how to word your application to win an award? I can help. I got 14 clients, which was awesome until I realized it was like 14 10-page essays all due the same day. So people either, I went and interviewed them and extracted the information, or they gave me their rough copy. And I couldn't believe how many people said, well, I participated in this, in this, in this. I organized this event. I did this on that date. I did this, I did this, I did this. That's not going to win you an award. Those experiences might be awesome, but I have no connection to them. And one lady, I kept saying, well, what is it? And finally I said, why do you do all these things? And then she gave me a heartfelt explanation. I was like, that's where we're going. Now, there was also another lady, and she is a franchise owner. She owns franchise, and she was nominated for the Accessibility Award. So that is inclusiveness, either serving or catering to or employing special needs, immigrants, that kind of thing. And she said, this award is so meaningful to me. I hope I win it. It's so meaningful to me. So she gave me last year's app, and it had a bunch of stats on it. And so she has 10% of her employment is special needs in some capacity, this and this, and she's got this policy and that policy and this policy. And I'm like, really? What? And I said, okay, why do you want to win it so bad? Oh, I just really do. And I said, no, why do you want to win? And we bantered back and forth. Finally, I got a 2.5-page email about why it was so important to her. And it had been generations of oppression. Her grandfather was an immigrant who couldn't find work and had to move around. Her mother had a disability. She couldn't get a job. She was denied things. She had another relative with Down syndrome. And this is why she made this into the policies of her company, because it was so, and I said, that is going to win you an award, because now all of a sudden we've tied meaning into that. We put some emotion behind that. So when you hit people's heartstrings, then they relate it to themselves, and they're in. They're in. When people make decisions, they make decisions based on emotion, not logic. Well, until they go home and tell their wife, and then kind of based on their wife's logic. But you will make a decision based on emotion first and then logic, or sometimes not even any logic. So now the other thing that's really important is humor. You have to add humor. Even if you're not funny, if you're not a stand-up comic, don't try to be one. Incorporate something that's funny into your presentation. I did a presentation in South Africa at a hospice, now on humor, and they all sat there stoic, nearly snarling at me, like, how dare I suggest that they use some humor in a hospice? And I told them about when my dad was there, and they had one of those whiteboards on the wall for the nurses. Well, the nurses weren't using it, so I went in every day and I wrote happy hour, starts at 4. Put the drink special and put the appy special. And my dad has Alzheimer's, so I'd ask him, what do you want to have for dinner today? So there's some really weird things we had on the menu. But the nurses would come in and see it. Every visitor would come in and see it. They would laugh. They'd think that was funny. And then they'd say, oh, Bruce, if I'd known I'd been here at 4, we could have had a drink together. And then I'd yeah, okay. And it just lightened everybody up. So I wasn't cracking jokes at his expense. I simply did something humorous to lighten the mood. Now, everybody thinks if you add something humorous, people will remember it better. That's both the truth and a myth. So if you add humor, but you add it not on your main point, they're going to remember over here. They're not going to remember the main point. And the myth part about it is that if you attach any emotion to what you're saying, people will remember it. So how do you remember people's birthdays? Because it's emotional. How many people use some anniversary date or a birth date or anything as their PIN number? Why? Because you're going to remember it, because it has emotional significance to it. So you can add any emotion to something, and that's when people will remember. It's not just exclusively humor. So there are 2 emotions that I recommend you completely avoid eliciting, and that is guilt and pity. Okay, so guilt. If you talk someone into buying something from you out of guilt, I say it's like a gateway drug. Okay, it's the gateway to other emotions. They're going to walk away. They're going to start to get annoyed. They're going to have regret. It's going to lead to resentment. Resentment's going to lead to anger. Anger is going to lead to avoidance. And you know what? That person is never going to buy off you again. So never, ever elicit guilt. And MLMers are famous for that. Could you just really help me out? Could you throw a party? Could you throw a Tupperware party for me? And then you do it kind of like, because you feel guilty if you don't. And pity. There's a fine difference between vulnerability and sympathy, compassion, and pity. Okay? You evoke pity, people now think you're weak. They don't see your strength. If you don't cap that vulnerability off with a strength, they now feel sorry for you. They pity you. They don't think you're strong. They don't think you're capable. They don't think you're resilient. Pity is too hard to recover from. So don't ever try to elicit pity from anyone. Now, moving right along, we have, check my time, logos. So provide proof. Proof to me means logic and also the what's in it for me. So with the what's in it for me, people buy things for 2 reasons, based on fear of losing out or the opportunity to gain. So you can use a little push-pull technique there and tell them what the value is. If you don't hire me, what's that going to be on your bottom line? You're going to have staff that aren't trained. You're going to have that. How much is that going to cost you in staff turnover? That kind of thing. And then the value of hiring me. Well, I can do this for you, and you're going to benefit by this and that, and you're going to have more motivated employees, that kind of thing. Okay, so they're either going to buy from you out of the fear that they're losing out, or this is the next big product. I have to have one, right? iPhone. How many people buy that new version on the release date? Because they're afraid of missing out. So you've got those 2 reasons and those 2 reasons only on why people make decisions to buy or not. So you need to provide some good proof for that. And it's also not about you. It's about them. The what's in it for me, everyone sitting here today is, what am I going to get out of her talking? I'm not just here to watch her talk. What am I going to actually walk away with? Where's my what's in it for me? And my other problem with MLMers is I'd really appreciate it if you could buy from me. I'd really like it, then. So could you do this for me? It's not about you. So you need to tell me what's in it for me. What am I going to get by buying another $100 worth of Tupperware? How is that going to benefit me? So don't tell me how it's going to benefit you, because I don't care. So not that we don't care. In general, someone doesn't care. Okay? So when you're offering proof, there's 2 kinds of proof: your natural proof and your emotional proof. Okay, so like you were saying earlier, you want numbers. Megan wants numbers. She wants to see her proof in stats, in data, in numbers, and I want to see seats and bums, or bums and seats. I need a cookie. I need a cookie. Okay, the other thing about natural proof is also testimony. So when you get those testimonials from your customers, those are worth their weight in gold because there's someone else bragging about you. Now you don't have to say, I provide excellent customer service, because you know what? John did on your Facebook page. Okay, so that tells you, that's a part of your story. That's him telling your part of your story. So there's natural proof and emotional proof. Now the emotional proof is kind of like the emotional essence. So what do you do when you're a startup and you don't actually have any proof of what you're going to do is going to work? Okay, how do you give stats that way? Well, the easiest way to do it, you could do it through prediction, or emotional essence, and paint a picture for them. I did a pitch. I started a program in Sarnia called Cyber Seniors. I matched high school volunteers with seniors to teach them social media. They learned how to use email, Facebook, that kind of thing. The students got their volunteer hours. Woo, 2 problems solved. So when I was pitching it, I don't have results because I have no idea if this is even going to work. So I told them what I wanted to work, and then as my proof, I said, just think of a room full of students and seniors. There's a buzz going on. People are talking to each other. Now think of how great this is. This is going to look great on Lauren's resume because she really aspires to work with seniors. And what about Mike? He's learning valuable leadership skills. And Tom, that little kid that says nothing and never speaks up at school, all of a sudden he comes alive because he's showing his knowledge to someone. He even convinces his senior to play Minecraft with him. Now what about Gordon? Gordon now will be able to learn to play bridge online through do-it-yourself videos so he can play with his old colleagues. And Martha, well, she can Skype her grandson who's on an exchange in Korea, and she hasn't seen him for almost a year. And can you imagine the look on Gordon's face when he sees his great-grandbaby for the very first time on Facebook? That's what Cyber Seniors can do. So is that proof? Does it sound like proof? Yeah. So what I've done is I have painted a very vivid picture of what my proof is going to be. And I'm going to have you buy into that, because now you're thinking, oh, my great-grandma, she would love to see pictures of my kids. She's, I have to go and take them and develop the pictures and mail them snail mail. Okay? So now I've pulled everybody's emotions in. So that is the emotional truth. Now, after Cyber Seniors was a success and I did know what they were, then I pitched it a little differently. I went to my natural proof. And I said, you know what, we were doing it, and I was just kind of walking around because I just make sure everybody's doing okay. And I said, I just stopped for a second and I heard the buzz in the room. And I looked around and everybody was talking and they were sharing and they were pointing things out. And they were really communicating, building relationships. And I just stopped and I just had a moment. I was like, it worked. It worked. Woo! Okay, so I've done, in essence, the same thing, except now this is real proof. And then I also didn't brag about myself and say, guess what I did? Woohoo! Successful program. I was humble about it and showed the truth. So there's ways to word things that provide one or the other. Now, you need to take all these things and you need to wrap them up in your story. And the best way to do that is what was said earlier. You need to ask the right questions. So you need to extract your clients' stories out of them by asking them the right questions based on those 3 points. Okay? So how are you going to build credibility in your story? How are you going to evoke emotions? And how are you going to provide proof? Whether it's real data, statistic proof, or emotional proof. Okay? So it's all about asking better stories. Now, as I said, I have written 112 essays. I've also edited so many more people's. And my saying was essay writing is like barfing. You have to get it all out before you clean it up. Okay? So the rough copy should never be the good copy. Okay? Barf, let it sit, go back and clean it up. So have them write their story out and then start asking those questions. Because the story's in there. You just need to chisel it out, clean up the barf, wipe it away, all that excess. And that's how you get a good story. As long as you have those three things, credibility, emotion, and proof, then you will have a good story and you will find people starting to respond to you and resonate with your experiences. So I could go on forever and ever. Megan has now positioned herself over there, which is my cue. If anyone is interested in following up and doing more, I can do workshops for you, for your clients directly, or give you some more training. I think you should go and try it yourself and see how good your questions are and how much you can push and pull out of your clients and get their stories. But their stories are really what is going to do it for them. And you can take my favorite saying and instead of essay writing, put storytelling in there. Storytelling's like barfing. You got to just clean it up, chisel it up, and it will hit. Okay?
All right, thank you.